Hey there, Kenneth French of Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. We're very, very happy you stopped by. Either you're going to watch this or listen to this because you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably an entrepreneur who's either just starting out or you've been around for quite a while and you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably a real estate investor, maybe even a real estate agent, maybe a professional or of some sort, professional advisor of some sort. And well, you are stopping by because you need some valuable advice from one of the top industry leaders there is. Anyway, thank you very much. Once again, Kenneth French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Really glad you stopped by.
Are you a real estate investor looking to get ahead with taxes, meaning to lower your tax liability? Also to help you as far as, asset protection, making sure you don't get sued and lose all your money. You're in the right place. You are in the right place. My name is Kenneth French. I'm with vastsolutionsgroup.com, a vast asset defense.com company. And we're going to talk about taxes, ways to lower your tax liability, and also protecting those hard-earned assets. Let's get right to it. I'm going to show you a presentation that you're going to be happy that you are visiting with us here at vastsolutionsgroup.com. So we're calling it Asset Protection, Tax, and Estate Planning for Real Estate Investors. Most of the clients here at vastsolutionsgroup.com are real estate investors. We have clients all over the country. By the way, our company's been around since 1969, way, way well-established company. If you look at our Google reviews and our history, we have done some good for clients. We have clients all over the country. And since we started in 1969, we know investments, we know real estate investments. And actually, since I took over in the company, 2006, we've learned a thing or two about taxes and mitigating taxes for our clients who are real estate investors. They might need maybe a qualified plan or two. They might need strategies to lower tax liability. They might need a who knows, a defined benefit plan, any strategy that can help lower tax liability, we pretty much know a thing or two about. We've also done, as you can see, artificial intelligence, tax finance and artificial intelligence. We've been doing artificial intelligence for some time. Really, people have been talking about it just recently. We've been doing it for years. We have our own model called Einstein, which really will help with bookkeeping, also will help with tax mitigation or lowering taxes. So I'm not going to take too long to talk about us because here what I'm trying to do is add value for you. Also, you might be here because of Bob Bloom and also Asset Defense Team. We've come together to form vastassetdefense.com. It's really helped small business owners. Now we're the one-stop shop for tax finance, artificial intelligence, and also your lovable asset protection and estate planning. Now, let's go over asset protection, why it matters for real estate agents in this case, but it can be for any real estate investor. Exposure to liability risks. Asset protection really is, at the end of the day, it's about limiting liability. People think because you're a real estate investor that you're rich. So who would you rather go after? Someone who's rich or someone who's poor? Well, probably someone who's rich. Real estate agents, real estate investors are rich. But now if they're protecting their assets, not just with, the umbrella insurance, if they're really protecting their assets, they're hard to get at. If you're an attorney, you're not going to go after, someone who's well-structured, or meaning who has a good asset protection plan in place. You're going to go after someone who's got a shoddy plan in place. But if you've taken care of your asset protection system and you're taken care of by a good attorney who knows a thing or two about asset protection, it's going to be harder to go after those assets. An attorney who's looking at those assets that are sheltered correctly, they know it's going to take a lot of time. They're going to go on to the next person who doesn't have a good plan in place, a good asset protection plan in place. Hence the reason ways to structure your assets via asset protection systems are much better off than people who aren't insofar as having their structure in place. Now, let's go into minimizing tax obligations. If you have a good asset protection strategy in place, insofar as you're working with a good asset protection attorney and also a good tax strategist all in one, they can minimize your tax obligation. There's ways to put things together in structuring your assets so you can limit your taxes and make sure you have a good asset protection plan in place. Hence the reason we decided to work with Bob over at Asset Defense Team, and now again with vastassetdefense.com, because it's a hand in glove. Again, we at vastsolutionsgroup.com do tax finance and artificial intelligence. He does asset protection and estate planning. So it's nice because we can work together to help business owners, usually real estate investors, to lower their tax liability and also get properly structured as far as asset protection goes. Now, also, A lot of people don't want to talk about estate planning. We get it. And one way of doing a kind of a proper, smooth transition to the heirs, as far as asset protection goes, as far as estate planning goes, is to have a proper structure up front, taken care of now. I know me personally, I've been married for years. I want to make sure that my heirs and my kids, my wife are taken care of if something happens to me. I don't want to work for 30 years, 40 years, and then all of a sudden lose it all because of a stupid, ridiculous, frivolous lawsuit. Again, the reason asset protection makes sense. Finally, protecting my personal assets. My home is in a trust, et cetera, but I want to make sure that I'm protected as far as my personal assets. I have some personal assets, right? But I want to make sure they're taken care of. Asset protection plan, if properly structured, will help make sure that, my personal assets are over here, my corporate assets are over here, and then I have other assets that are kind of underneath both, but they're properly structured, so I don't have to worry about it in case of lawsuits, et cetera. Now, what I would also say is, by the way, worst comes to worst, you should be talking to an asset protection attorney or a tax strategist as it relates to all this stuff. Maybe go back to your asset protection attorney. Ask them what their thoughts are. They know your situation. You don't have an asset protection attorney, or don't have a proper estate plan in place, you don't have a tax strategist, reach out to us. Or by the way, sometimes we'll even go out and talk to existing attorneys, because they might not know how to put together a proper asset protection structure. So we also do that. That's one. We teach asset protection attorneys. We also teach tax mitigation experts or experts to get the job done for their clients. Let's talk about the key principles of effective asset protection. This is big because a lot of people don't think about this, but you as an individual investor, you should at least have a working knowledge of effective asset protection. You need to diversify. You don't want to have all of your eggs in one spot. So let's just say you're walking around, you have 10 eggs in a bowl, and you drop that bowl. All your eggs are broken. You get it, right? But now let's say you have a an egg in 10 different cups, right? And let's say trying to hold all these cups. All of a sudden you drop 6 cups. Well, remember, you had 1 egg in each. Well, the other 4 are going to be taken care of because they're in your hand. At least you're diversified in that regard. That's one element of asset protection, believe it or not. Also, limit exposure. There's ways to limit your exposure by asset protection strategies. And one way of doing that is smart exposure, because there's ways to move assets here. There's ways to move assets here. So there's a number of different ways. That, luckily, is what Bob does. By the way, Bob's been on the other side of asset protection. He's gone after the investors before. He's gone after the plaintiffs before, but now he's on the other side. He's on the good side. He's taking care of the business owner so they don't get sued. So he understands both sides. One of his key specialties, I should say, is limiting exposure. Leveraging legal structures. If you have the right structures in place, let's just say typically it's an LLC. That's one of the big ones. If you have a good legal structure in place, that will help you, because you've got to leverage them. You got to know when to have an LLC. You got to know when not to have an LLC. You have to know when to have an S corp, C corp, a partnership, whatever the case is. That's probably the third key principle to effective asset protection. Then finally, separating of assets. That's also in line with diversification, but there's ways to separate the assets that are not in line with diversification, believe it or not. So, those are 4 elements that really can help an overall effective asset protection plan. By the way, little ad here, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, you probably know him from Shark Tank. He, as a spouse mentioned, we do good stuff. Check out vastsolutionsgroup.com. Check out what we're doing. They're using AI to save money for entrepreneurs on tax. You'll be glad you did. I love that, by the way. He wasn't paid anyway to do that. Let's talk about tax planning strategies for real estate types, either agents or investors. Again, most of our clients, we specialize in real estate agents and investors as an example. Maximize the deduction. So many people forget to maximize their deductions. This blows me away. There's so many people they'll do a class on real estate investing, let's just say, and they figured out that they can make whatever. Let's just say they're making $10,000 a month based on real estate. Well, great. What you take home is more important than what you gross. So let's say you gross 10,000. Well, then your taxes are making this up 40%. That's $4,000 of that 10 grand, right? So you're walking home with $6 grand, right? Because the taxes, let's just say. But now let's say you've worked on strategizing, on mitigating your taxes, minimizing your taxes instead of, 20% tax. Let's just say your tax liability is, sorry, instead of 40%, let's say it's 20%. Well, okay. The tax planning strategist has helped out in that regard because now what you're taking home in that case is 8,000 of the 10,000. That's what matters more than anything. Number one. Number two, if you project what your taxes are and work backwards, you're going to be better off. April 15th comes, you're paying your tax liability, ridiculous. What you should know is what your tax liability is going to be before the end of the year, before April 15th, because then you could plan in reverse. Plus, you could plan your cash flow. There's so many things you could do if you're projecting what your tax liability is. Project forward, work backwards. That's one way of looking at it. Hence the reason that's why we adopted artificial intelligence, because we knew AI was going to help with limiting taxes. We knew it for a fact, and it's done that for numerous of our clients. Again, check our website, check our Google score. You'll see. Deferring income. One way of doing it is, I'll throw out this thing 453A. There's ways to defer income on highly appreciated real estate. Think about that. Do you want to pay taxes now or do you want to pay later? If you can pay later, just like I was saying at maximizing your deductions, you can strategize what to do as a result of that. If you're paying your taxes down the road, you can strategize what to do now to make sure that your taxes are paid. Plus, you can mitigate how much the tax liability is because you're projecting forward. Leveraging tax advantage accounts, big thing. Sometimes we talk about SEP IRAs, solo 401ks. There's a bunch of things as far as tax advantage investments that you could do to limit and your tax liability. I'm also going to say, I'm going to remind you, a lot of people forget this. Even after the year is over, you potentially could limit tax liability for the prior year. It depends on your circumstance. You have to talk to your tax strategist. We can do that. I'm going to remind you again. Even after the year is over, you might be able to do something today to limit the tax liability from before. Or, by the way, there's a bunch of stuff that you could do from years, sometimes even 3 years ago. You could limit your tax liability on a number of different strategies. Anyway, talk to your tax provider or go to vastsolutionsgroup.com. We can look into that. Navigating evolving tax regulations, be proactive. That's why we use artificial intelligence to help us with the always changing tax regulations. We need to know the tax in every state, and we need to know the federal taxes in every in the jurisdiction of which sometimes they're local to the U.S., sometimes they're over in Canada, sometimes they're over in Europe. You got to know what's going on as far as your tax liability. This is just things, again, for you as an investor to think about. Or again, you can be a real estate agent as well. Now let's talk about some estate planning essentials. Wills and trusts. Wills and trusts are huge components of estate planning. Now, some people say, "Oh, I'm only worth whatever, 10 million bucks. I only need a will." Yeah, sometimes that is the case, but generally speaking, that's not the case. You should look into a trust because you could pass your assets, sometimes tax on a tax neutral or at least tax favored basis because you've put together a trust and is properly structured. And by the way, I know no one wants to talk about this stuff, but sometimes it's something that can save your kids 40 cents on the dollar. You want to save your kids 40 cents on the dollar? Think about doing some planning now versus later before it's too late. I could give you some horror stories about people who've waited too late, and that will also potentially minimize your estate tax. Plus the transition. I know when I pass away, I want to make sure my kids are taken care of, my wife's taken care of. Now, one way of doing that is estate planning up front. The quicker you do it, the better off you are. Now, I remember I flew to Denver and it was was it a horrible experience. I thought I was going to die. And man, I know it's crazy, but I was thinking my kids aren't going to be taken care of. That freaked me out. Now, I want to make sure that my assets are passed on in as smooth of a process as possible. So one way of doing that is estate planning now. So you don't have to worry when you're on that choppy turbulence ridden plane that something's going to happen to you. Also, you can protect your beneficiaries. You can safeguard, as here I say, safeguard your loved ones by providing their financial security, by distributing your assets as you want to now, so there's no fighting down the road. Believe me, I've seen it where people fight and fight and fight for assets, and it's broken up families. It really, one guy, oh my gosh, he totally broke up the family. He hates us because we had to take the higher road and work with his sister versus him. But that's that sometimes can be that could have been rid of in that case, because if they would have taken care of the uh, estate plan, had a proper estate plan in place, and we ended up getting yelled at for it. Anyway, here you see Bob Bloom, attorney, assetdefenseteam.com, but he's also runs asset defense team. Then here you see me, Kenneth French, the AI version of me when I was much better looking, manager at vastsolutionsgroup.com. Liliana Faulkner does our communications at vastsolutionsgroup.com. And we have a team of people behind us, but it's worth noting that, a couple of different people, Madeline Bolinato, who's the one who's kind of runs our tech side. We have a lot of people on our team. I feel guilty not mentioning them all. We have a lot of people who are kind of leading who are on the team. Really, the leaders aren't, it's not just enough to say, us as leaders, but it's really so many people who've, we really should give credit for, who've really been able to help us to succeed and help you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. There's no way we could have been around since 1969 if it weren't such a, huge team. By the way, our team is virtual. We've been doing artificial intelligence for a while. We do use and lean on artificial intelligence quite a bit to help us. What's the advantage? ValSolutionsGroup.com, customized strategies as it relates to all our business owner clients, because we work with real estate investors, real estate agents. We know your plight. We know what you're going through. We're real estate investors. Most of us are real estate investors, so we know exactly what you're going through. We try to be proactive because of our artificial intelligence model. We have Vast Cares, also a service model. We're responsive to client service because of artificial intelligence has helped us to get there, and then a proven track record. There's not very many companies that have been around since 1969 that do, tax artificial intelligence, and also, finance. By the way, we do finance real estate property. So if you're looking for financing for real estate, we also do that. We have a number of clients also internally who are here to help you to, get some financing going for real estate. And what I should also say, this is important, bookkeeping, in some cases we have free bookkeeping. We have our model, it's called vastbookie.ai, which is to help business owners who are really looking, instead of having let's say a lower level bookkeeper, our artificial intelligence system helps. And a lot of times that's free. It's automated, makes it very nice as a business owner. That number one. Then also number two, it's really, really nice that, we've been able to couple that with our tax strategy using, again, Einstein. Best in the business, best in the biz per Deval Patel, who says he'd highly recommend us. If you need us, vastsolutionsgroup.com. Our phone number, 415-212-8189. If you want to text us, 415-212-8189. Also, if you have any questions, specific info at vastsolutionsgroup.com, info at vastsolutionsgroup.com. This has been fun. Hopefully this has been helpful. It's added value as far as tax mitigation and estate planning. We're here to help you. If you have any questions, I've given you the main places to go to for questions, and that's, vastsolutionsgroup.com. We have a huge number of resources, tools, etc., that can help you. As I mentioned, the Vast Bookie, our community is unbelievable. Our community is huge. We thought it was going to be a small little thing, but it's gaining traction. So many people want to be a part of it. We have a free version. We have a $199 a month version. And it's called the Vast Vault. There's an app. We have an app. Not very many people have an app like what we have going. We're here to help you. And by the way, I'm going to close this by saying, if you need any help, Vast Cares, which is our basically our customer service model that helps with business owners who are looking for a little bit more help. We're open to help you as a business owner take your business to the next level. Once again, this is Kenneth French, vastsolutionsgroup.com. Thank you.